It's been good for all of us. None of us expected to see the growth that we have now experienced.
Something about the elections environment that just lit a fire in me. It was just very, very cool. It was exciting. It was high pressure, high energy, and it had to be done with excellence.
Nobody goes into election saying, this is what I wanted to do my whole life. You know, people kind of stumble into it and they love it. You just get it in your blood.
The elections community is not like any other governmental agency or entity that I've experienced. It just doesn't feel like a business and a customer relationship. It feels more like we are a group of people that are trying to solve a problem.
When you register somebody, that was a cumbersome process. The computers in the early 90s that I found in the office were elementary. In fact, there were many, many counties in the state of Florida that did not own a computer in the elections field.
To be able to look on your computer on election day and see what voter turnout is by precinct, we've never been able to do that before.
The place had just a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of great people, and getting something neat done.
Those kind of numbers allow the voters to know what's happening, and that takes away their fears that somehow that election may be altered or changed. So part of that process is transparency, and it's integrated into the entire system, which VR has been very successful in doing to make us look very good.
We don't have any problem with transparency with any of our procedures, any of our equipment, any of the guidelines that we live by. In Florida, this is probably the most open public records request state there is.
We're not a normal vendor by any stretch of the imagination. We do not nickel and dime the counties to death. When you pick up the phone and you call VR, you'll get an answer. You don't get a bill 5 days later. That's just not the model we have ever used.
It was just an exciting thing. They just wanted to be the best in Florida. And look at how many counties have VR systems. They obviously succeeded in what they wanted to do.
Our focus really is on our customers and how we can help them save money, how we can help them save time. Everybody's role is important in the success of this business.
You know, they've been there for me for so much. I've called them on weekends. I've called them at night when I'm, because we work long hours on elections and someone will always answer the phone.
It's more than just a customer-vendor relationship. I mean, we really do. We like our customers.
They actually call us for other issues that they have, like if it's a printer issue that's not voter focus related, and we're there to help or listen. I like that I'm established that relationship within the elections community.
They hug us. They're happy to see us, and I'm like, this is different. We're a vendor, but it's part of our family.
Because of that, the culture that the founders, David and Jane, put into this company continues to grow and be carried out by all of the employees.
So right off the bat, I started looking at how to improve the elections processes in the state of Florida. And my decision was to look all over the country for the best technology. That's where David and Jane come in. They walked into my office and said, we want to build voter registration software that works for supervisory elections. We have computer skills, but we don't know anything about elections.
The mainframe software was just so expensive for the little counties and medium-sized counties. They just couldn't afford mainframe software. So we built this PC-based system which they could afford.
And so basically what we did was we brought in David and Jane. We had them watch every transaction that we did.
Ion's office taught us a lot about elections, which we hadn't realized.
We were in there a lot.
We were to start off with.
We were in their offices a tremendous amount.
I'm trying to understand poll worker management and assigning poll workers to classes and getting them paid, and they did extra pay for driving these miles, and all the nitty-gritty details. We learned a lot from them.
The approach that David and Jane used, which was we need to learn first. Quite frankly, that's how all, in my opinion, software should be developed. You need to see what the procedures and practices are. What are the laws requiring us to do? Then you essentially can build a program based upon that that's usable, that's accessible for the citizens. Because if it's not going to be accessible to my staff, then what use is it?
I read all the statutes and I understand what was supposed to happen.
We were the only vendor doing that.
Yes.
Even then. that the only people trying to create software for the space that were paying attention to the statutory basis on what was going on.
You had Jane going to conferences for years without a sale, just to learn enough about the elections business so that she could be highly supportive of it.
Jane and I would go to conferences. I worked with another company out of Ohio.
You don't put competitors next door to each other. There were just two of us in the room. So we sort of had this gentleman's agreement that if one of us had a customer coming in, the other one would leave the room. But for 2 days, we just talked to each other, and I really felt he had the same values that we do.
Then at the 2000 election, I had come over to their house, and they wanted to know if I would want to work with them a little bit. And from there, I thought maybe that I could get Jane maybe another 15, 20 customers in 5 or 6 years. And we went to the next conference with 23.
Somewhere there is a scrappy little piece of paper with our agreement written on it, but neither is there was never a copy made. We didn't, it was just really been an understanding through all these years.
We were at the right place at the right time for Jane, David, and myself, and it just blew up. We hired Mindy on after that, and I had to move out of Jane's living room.
Yes, it was all out of our house.
Yeah.
And so it was Jane and I in the living room, and David was in the converted garage.
We said to Mindy, well, I know you're a trained teacher, you have a master in education, but it's come and work for us for 6 months. You can't lose anything. You'll learn software, you'll learn some things that might be useful, and if it doesn't work out, you go your way and we'll go
We
ours.
used that bait and switch so many times. We did that with Fred.
We did that with Fred too, yeah. Fred, just come and help us out for a while, and then go on.
Yeah, you'll be all right
Yeah.
afterwards,
So I was brought in when we had our first office. In fact, I helped build the racks and shelves to put the servers on in that first office. So that was kind of my first job, actually, was, hey, Fred, put these shelves together. Real technical.
We rented a place that had 5 or 6 offices, and that was big, right? We each had our office, and I wasn't sharing a living room.
And we've watched it go from one office to another to now we're in the 2 buildings here in North Carolina.
Our campus up in North Carolina, VR North.
My hat's off to Jane for her tenacity and her patience, for coming to those meetings, supporting supervisors, meeting after meeting after meeting. And I believe that because of that people saw what they were getting and who they were getting with it, and that made all the difference in the world.
36 installations in 36 months. I still don't understand how we did it.
Either Mindy or I was on the road all the time.
We hired Ren Fowler in 2002.
Right after the 2000 recount is when VR Systems really started to pick up new customers and amp up.
The whole industry was hungry for efficiency.
2000 helped Florida, and it helped the country in general to look at all aspects of elections to see what you can do to make it better.
Out of that came many federal laws and Florida laws to modernize elections, to professionalize elections.
When the Help America Vote Act came in, it really was requiring supervisors of elections to do a lot more than what they had done before or up to that point.
So the company started as a voter registration company. That was what its intent was.
Development of the voter registration program just morphed into something a lot bigger than we really expected it to.
Register voters, check in people who've signed petitions, track their poll workers. It just was a one-stop shop. It was everything the elections offices needed to manage their voter registration rolls, manage their elections, print their paper registers.
At the time we came across David and Jane, we had our own voter registration system. It just wasn't alive and meeting all of the needs and able to just move things quickly. So we started to look at the VR system, and I think there were a few counties that had gone that way. But my staff was, and I listened to the staff, they were saying, oh, well, Dr. Snipes, I don't know if that's going to be a good idea or not, because that means we got to change everything over and it's going to take time. And so I thought, but it looks like it might take us into another era.
But as soon as you have one of the medium to larger counties really give a look at VR systems, and they went, they're going, well, gosh, if Broward can do that, then why can't Pasco? it skyrocketed.
Some of the Florida counties are extremely big by U.S. standards. There are very few counties in the United States who are bigger than Miami-Dade and Broward County.
If you think about the smallest county with 10,000 voters to the biggest county that's got 1.2 million voters, their needs are so wildly different, and we work very hard to try to understand those differences and those needs so that when we construct a piece of software or a service, it really does kind of morph itself into what is needed in those environments.
The previous system that I had, all of a sudden they decided that they were not going to service us anymore because they didn't have enough clients in Florida. So right there in May of 2002, which is an election year, we had to change voter registration systems. And we have our first primary in August. So that's not a lot of time in the election world, which I was very nervous about. And everything went beautifully. It was seamless. And so I was in love with VR then.
Quickly grew that into the space of dealing with the electronic poll books, which actually grew out of a hurricane, which I think you've probably heard that story numerous times from other folks as well.
It was the week before the primary election, and Hurricane Charlie came right through Charlotte County, Florida, and devastated many counties.
The supervisor in Hardee County on the Sunday after it passed through was picking up sticks in his yard and passed away. And so Dale stepped in and helped a lot there. And Ren took over all of the absentee ballot management.
I had a directive from Governor Bush to make it happen, whatever it takes, make the election happen.
We were deputized by the Secretary of State to help Jeff Ursery, who was later appointed to be the supervisor of elections in Hardee County.
They had a guy from the warehouse who didn't know anything about running the election side of it. The mailings were great. We sent the sample ballots out like we should have, and we got over 80% of them back because there were no mailboxes.
David and Eric went to Charlotte County to help them during their time.
So it became clear that this wasn't going to be an ordinary election.
We lost polling locations because they were either damaged or being used as shelters.
So we really had to come up with a new election scheme on the fly that was going to, meet this surprise set of needs.
We had a program that you and Fred sort of adapted.
David spearheading it with Eric and Fred involved, and they said, okay, what can we do to this product to make it work for kind of a check-in? They're not going to be able to print paper poll books.
We need to come up with some way of getting people through the lines faster than paper registers are going to be able to achieve.
We were working round the clock preparing the software because this essentially was the electronic poll book, but we were writing it in about 10 days. And Eric went down to prepare the hardware, and we still didn't have a working version of the software when we went down.
Why don't we get some laptops and get a printer plugged into it and get some way of scanning a driver's license, and that way we can get them through.
In those days in hotels, if you went to checked in a hotel, and they would swipe your card across the top of a keyboard, and those were a Cherry keyboard, and they were made in Germany. And we wiped out the U.S. stock of it. We hunted every last one down.
We worked very hard to build a system that could allow thousands of voters to go to a single location and check in so that they could vote.
They were prepared to do anything, to bring us supplies, to come to our office and help us. Eric came to our office to help us. Then David had this magical thing called Fast Voter Check-In, and it worked out really well. Yeah.
Dymo label printers, Cherry keyboards, and laptops.
And a mouse.
We weren't out there trying to figure out how we can make money out of this disaster that just happened. We were out there trying to figure out how we can help deliver an election in 2 weeks' time. I mean, it was crazy to hold an election where there were no precincts. They'd all been blown away.
And this was awesome because we had 3 check-in stations at each super site, and it ran amazingly well for, the tragedy that we were faced with.
I always call Evid as the son of Charlie, because out of this devastation came our Evid product.
So we got through the process, and afterwards we sat down with Laurie, because I thought at that time that there was a product here. And so we said, well, what do you think of it? Would you use it again? And she came with this list of shortcomings.
Well, it was difficult to set up. Just a bit much than what you would expect a poll worker to be able to do.
Giant awkward keyboard that we had to deploy. So there was that. There was this Dymo label printer that had to be plugged into the right port, or it wasn't going to work right. If you plugged into the other one, it was going to try to reinstall stuff and just not unconfuse people and all that.
But she provided a lot of information to us, and so that, together with what we knew about the elections process and running the election became the requirement definition for the product we created.
The very first thing we went after is figuring out how to consolidate the hardware.
But they were huge, clunky black things to start off with, and we've gradually over the years gotten them smaller and neater.
We took it to the December conference, and the hardware was not what I wanted it to be. Sitting on a big tray, and there's a printer sitting on some foam, and then there's a point-of-sale terminal sitting on a piece of foam, and there's a piece of foam supporting the signature pad, and this
It was
wide.
heavy. I think it was 40 pounds or something.
About 30
Really,
pounds.
30 pounds, 30 pounds.
Yeah, Dale practiced carrying it in looking like it was as light as a feather. So we took it to the conference, and there was another vendor there who had like an 8-inch tablet. I mean, a picture of beauty and simplicity. And we have this Titanic thing sitting there, and we're offering it as the solution. And the vendor could get no traction at all. Could hardly get anybody to visit it. He couldn't demonstrate it. He couldn't run it. When he ran it, it didn't work. And we had a working system. We could show exactly how it worked. We could show how the solution worked in warehousing, because these things spend all of their life sitting in a warehouse. So, you know, we showed how it got delivered to the poll site, how you picked it off. There was nothing to do. You plugged it into the wall, and the supervisors are blown away by really what was a very ungainly looking piece of hardware. But because it perfectly fit all of the problems they saw with it, their reaction was, well, you thought of everything.
Before, what we had to do was kind of poll, you know, we have 200 precincts, poll the precincts and say, how many people have you had? Compute that, try to put out a spreadsheet so people could see during the day how many people had turned out. With the eVids, automatically we had that data throughout the day, and so people could see. They could see a graph of how many people of different parties had come out, you know, what time of day they've come out, you know, how many people had voted early or voted absentee. All that kind of information really makes the supervisor of elections look good, you know, and we appreciate that. And it also just makes the system look like it's very professional, and voters like that because there's more comfort when you know the system is run through a very professional operation.
We took the plunge and had eVids in every polling place for the 2008 presidential preference primary. And I remember some of not necessarily my staff, but some folks saying, oh, that's not going to work. These folks that are poll workers are never going to learn those eVids. They just afraid of computers, and they just, oh my God, and I thought, what have we done? It did work. It worked.
They were our first really large order. We had some pretty big order. We had a 300-seat order, but that was 1,000 units.
Once our voters are checked in on the electronic voter ID system, the eVid system, it really prevents them from being able to go to another polling location and voting again. That was really a loophole in the system with the paper registers. So we were very glad to close that loophole.
Oh, they are on point with all the legislation. That's part of the service is you get the changes in the law will take effect in the software as well, which is pretty important.
We have a very good relationship with the state. We feel they're a partner, that it's like a three-legged stool. There's the supervisors, the Department of State, and us in a sense, and we're all in a part of a team, and we need to work together and give them a sense of how long it takes to develop software and what our needs are. And they've been very responsive, they really have, and appreciative too of what we're trying to do is to make sure that each of us is successful.
George, who was here earlier, is our IT director. He sets a standard of service and a standard for the product that has to be met. And George has taught us that we can get a person through the eVid in 30 seconds. So when we figure out you can get one through one eVid in 30 seconds, you get two in a minute, and then if you got this many eVids, you extrapolate it out to all the people that are standing in line. That gives us an idea of how long a person may have to stand in line. So in Broward County, we developed the first wait time concept and process through my Crackerjack team.
I'm thinking, this is cool. I was all about cool. I was all about new, innovative stuff. But when you're talking about spending the kind of money that we were going to be spending on eVids, what gave me the comfort level that I needed to do it was the people.
We believe that what we do is important. It's important to our customers. It's important to this country as a whole. We believe in the elections process. We want it to be fair, honest, above board, beyond reproach.
the people who are here, I think that there's a sense of real civic value of what we do. It's nice to come to work and feel like you're doing something that makes some difference.
Really very exciting when people get it and how their role helps all of us improve and how all of us get better and all of us go in that same direction. It's just very powerful.
Getting to know them, I think is not only just kind of emotionally therapeutic, really knowing who you're helping and why you're making a difference, but it's also just been a good business model. It's really, really worked out, built a great company, built a great culture, and a high level of motivation and satisfaction.
So we're not the type of company that we just support our customer from 8 to 5. If they call during non-traditional hours, they'll get an after-hours message. And one of the options is if it's an even emergency, press this number. The next time that phone rings, it's my cell phone. Sometimes it might be 2 a.m. on a Saturday, and when I answer the phone, I might be a little groggy, but I take down the information and I let them know that we'll have a technician call them back within the next 15 to 20 minutes, and we do.
Amazing enough, and you constantly would ask the question, is everybody here related or something? Because you really felt it was a family. And so in that way, whether dealing with Mindy or anyone else, you could tell from the top down that they resonated throughout their employees that, hey guys, we're here to make them look good. When they look good, we look good.
Customer feedback is the foundation of how we move the product forward. We track feedback that we get from our customers as it comes in. We put this in logs. We go through the logs and we determine which of those logs we think are most important to our customer base. Then we open it up to our customers for them to tell us, yes, you got it, that's how we want to go, or these other things are extremely important to us, can you add those in also? We do that every other year, just before we start building the new software for the next major release. And that's how we craft the vision for what the next product release will look like.
So they've built around responding to the needs of the customer. The customer are here, our supervisor of elections, and their staff.
Marrying what the developers know, which, in my opinion, to put it simply, is they know what's possible. And what the support and testers know and the people who interact more regularly with the customers know is what's needed and what the people do and why they do it and those kinds of things. And I found such immense power in putting those two together. Just knowing what's possible doesn't always graft to what's really needed, and vice versa. Sometimes if you know what's needed but you don't know what can be done, then you don't really serve the need the best way. So
now you mention it, I remember that the idea of going and having a user meeting in which we talked about what was going on in the product and what our release plans were and what were the known issues and what we were going to solve and what our response was going to be to upcoming legislation was so radical, and eventually we were incorporated into the agenda.
Yeah.
It moved away from an optional meeting into it is so important, so vital to what's going on that it was incorporated into the agenda.
Mm-hmm. The system became so well thought of that when the state of Florida built the statewide database, which it put online in 2006, at the heart of that is VR software as well. So it really is and has become the backbone of voter registration system software in the state of Florida.
David played a key role in the Florida voter registration system.
So my transaction designs, kind of carried over into that project. I didn't write any code, I didn't touch a lick of code, but those transaction designs are what IBM implemented. And that design phase was going on the time we were building EVID for the first time. So we were doing designing of FER, so we're building EVID and we were releasing Web Focus for the first time, all in that same period of about 6 months.
The bulk of the information that's useful to a voter is in the registration system. So we just kept talking about that and explaining to ourselves that, gosh, we probably should try to figure out a way to deliver that information into the internet space. That's how we got into the website environment.
It's a great website and a great platform for us and allows us to do lots of things. We get lots of compliments from our voters, which is what it's all about.
They're extremely involved. I mean, our voter registration software, our website, election night reporting, the EVIDs, and training. The online training is now with VR. Every time they come up with something, it's like, oh, we need that. That'll save me so much time if I can use what you guys have, and it's amazing.
And when a customer picks up the phone and calls us, they don't get charged for that.
They call us at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, and we call them back, I don't send them a bill for overtime. That's not how you treat your friends and your family, and we consider our customers friends and family.
I can remember back in the day asking, well, why, you ought to think about selling this to other states.
We have multiple products in almost all of the counties. The saturation of the Florida market was very big. Then the opportunity came up with decision support.
Acquiring decision support was a good opportunity to do that.
It was like meeting people that had been hired by VR Systems 10 years earlier. Same mindset, same internal clocks of how things should be and how we should treat customers and how we should think about the elections. It was amazing.
And over the past year, we've continued to grow in that environment.
I think the growth of their employees is evidenced by the success that they had in Florida. Early on, it was Jane and David.
By making this now a ESOP, a totally 100% employee owned, every employee has a vested interest in those customers. So if they succeed, we succeed.
Being employee owned is something that no other elections vendor is.
It's the best, worst kept secret in the United States, in my opinion. I think if more companies were formed around that concept, we would see a lot different attitude about what work is.
In so many other elections vendors, you see a familiar face, you're like, oh, that's Joe. What company is Joe with now? And they hop from company to company. Our customers see the same faces.
Our employees, they stay here for a long time. Our retention is great because they are great.
Many small companies, they end up being bought out by either venture capitalists or other companies that are really, all they're really interested in is the customer base. And they're not going to carry on with the same mission and vision that the company was founded with. They're interested in extracting the profit out of it.
When we hire people, we make sure everyone's involved. So we have all the team members in on interviews, and because you have to work with that person on a daily basis. So we're trying to get the right fit for our culture here. And it's very family oriented, and we all have open door policies. If you need help with anything, we're here. And we also help each other in the community in different events.
It solved the issue of management competency because we actually thought that the best qualified group of people capable of doing what we were doing here were already here.
David started researching. It was really he that came up with, I think an ESOP is the way to go.
But there had been years of preparation getting Mindy and the other managers ready for those leadership roles as David and Jane prepared to leave the company.
Mindy was one of the original 7 that I interviewed with, bringing in the person who's been there since day one nearly, or throughout most of our major change, has seen the decision-making process for years and knows the values and things that we idolize. How could you have a better choice?
Mindy brought an organization that Jane and I are not gifted at the way Mindy is. So I think what was cool is we found such a great employee.
You can see in your eyes if someone's listening to you, and Mindy always gives you that attention.
We kind of felt we understood where the business was going, and in fact, it doubled in value in the 5 years afterwards, and it was very much the management team who were driving that. It was just empowering for them, and it was validating. I don't think we realized how much they were going to improve it. We thought it was already perfect.
But for me, it was absolutely immediate that they just couldn't have made a better decision for the longevity of the company and for their customers.
I think that's Jane and David. They believe in people. I think it takes a lot when you think about a company that you dreamed of and you conceptualized it and you actually brought it to fruition, and you're going to let other people own it and run it. But it goes back to the caliber, quality of people that you have.
I wish I'd been one of them employees to be part of that ownership. I think the success of it is really translated, and I think that's part what we talked about earlier about a family situation. I hope they always stay that way.
It just motivates me to do my best every day with the ESOP. Like, okay, I have a stock in this, and I want to do my best so that it can continue to strive as a successful company. So every day I come in and do my best above and beyond to make sure that happens.
Jane focused a lot on creating a culture where the customer knows they can trust us, that we've got their best interest in mind all the time, that we're here to protect them from making mistakes, and that they trust us as experts in the elections arena, that we never put anything in front of doing the right thing for the right reason.
They're just remarkably generous people and fair people, and it came through in the company they built. You know, you can really tell that why people behave the way they do in so many cases is inspired by the way Jane and David behave and ideals that they've set forth and defended over time.
Well, David, particularly because I don't have a brother, is like the brother I never had. But he's a mentor. He has always looked to find ways to help each individual grow. Jane is an amazing person too, because she creates this safe foundation. If a storm starts to brew, you always have a safe place to go and talk about it and deal with it. And you're not going to be driven to a place that isn't comfortable. And you're going to probably deal with the storm just fine. So that's a personal thing. That's not a business thing.
Yeah, he's pushed me, and I owe a lot to him and to Jane. They've helped me get. I mean, I owe it all to them. You know, they saw something in me years ago that I'm so grateful they did. And they're just great people, and I think that having great people running elections and having Jane and David, it's just a magical combination of, you know, of what they've built here.
That's going to be very tough.
Yeah, yeah.
That's weepy tough. That's that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. It's kind of like graduating from college. You know, it's you had so many friends, so many neat experiences, but there's more stuff out there to see and do. And
yeah.
We just need to step away and not meddle.
It's ironic that Dave and Jane are kind of retiring at the same time that I'm retiring. You know, we both came in together, brand new individuals back and trying to reform this and make the best process we could for different reasons. I think we've done that. Leon County is recognized among the leaders, not only in the state, but in the nation in terms of accessibility and ensuring that voters vote count as they intended. And quite frankly, that would not have been possible without the cooperation of David and Jane Watson, ensuring that their computer skills and software abilities were brought into this field, into modern elections.
And I congratulate them for what they've done to not just change elections in Florida, but like revolutionize elections in Florida. They've brought things, equipment and procedures, and put them in front of us and convinced us that that this equipment will really serve our purpose as well. We bought into it. It's working. So I think they were trailblazers in this arena. They were always looking to see how they could make things better, and I think they did it. And then they can walk off from the company and leave their staff, their employees in charge. It's now their company. I think it's awesome.
That will be their living legacy, because the staff here is trained for the customer. They're not trained for themselves. And as long as the employees here maintain that focus on the customer, it will do nothing but succeed.
Jane was steady as slow. It almost reminds me like the tortoise and the hare. You know, Jane was that tortoise, just slow and steady. You got the answers. Just the solid. And then there's David, who was fast, quick, and ready for an answer, and he was ready to interject an opinion. Nothing wrong with it. And I love David to death, but just two different types of people that have come together and formed a company that has just impacted Florida elections like none other. Just absolute like none other.
Yeah.
Tortoise and the hare.
That's an awesome